My brothers and sisters in Christ, today in the Gospel of Matthew, we hear the famous passage of Peter's confession of Christ at Caesarea Philippi. I had the chance to break open this passage more fully back on June 29th, the Solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul. Today I can only do so briefly. And as important as the theology of Petrine supremacy is, I want to kind of set that aside for today and just look at the reference and the etymology of rock as Jesus is referring to in this passage, since it's one that is often controversial in theological circles, especially amongst non-Catholics. So Jesus says to Peter, I say, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. So who or what is the rock that he is referring to here? Keep in mind that the Gospel of Matthew is originally composed in Greek, and Greek contains a noun for the word rock that can be used, the word rock in Greek is feminine, petra. Here, Jesus says, you are Petros. Upon this petra, I will build my rock. Some have claimed that there therefore is a distinction, that Peter is not the rock he is speaking of. Of course, others point out that it wouldn't be fitting to give Peter a feminine name, so Petros is just a masculine form of Petra. Now, keep in mind, this set aside that this conversation between Jesus and Peter was not originally had in Greek. It was had in Aramaic. And so this is a Greek recording of a conversation in which the word of kephas was one that was not, it was a genderless word. And so there is no distinction to be drawn here. Okay, if you're rolling your eyes at the grammar nerding out here, we can move past that for the moment so to see that Jesus gives Peter a name derivative of rock. So you are the rock, Petros, Peter, you are the rock. But second of all, upon this rock that he will build his church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. Here there is another twofold reference that Jesus is making. For the Jewish people, and keep in mind Caesarea Philippi is pagan territory, but for the Jewish people, the temple in Jerusalem was built over the threshold to hell. And so the temple of God's abundance was, in a sense, kind of standing over the passage between earth and the underworld. And so this is important for the Jewish way of thinking. The rock of the temple, that, of course, the temple is the Jewish sense of the church before it gets its Christian overtone. But so already there's a Jewish notion that the temple stands on this threshold to the underworld. But at Caesarea Philippi, there's another notion of this. Caesarea Philippi was the site of the pagan worship of the pagan deity Pan. And so when you visit Caesarea Philippi today, the ruins of the Temple of Pan stand by a cave that the ancients believed was a passage to hell or a passage to the underworld. And so we have both a dualistic sense, both of the Jewish understanding of the temple and even in pagan worship amongst the Gentiles, of the sense of the gates of the netherworld, the passage to the netherworld. But Jesus says, you are the rock. You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Not just the Jerusalem temple, not the temple of Pan. I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld will not prevail against it. This temple, this church, will stand up against the threshold of hell. And so this is very important for our understanding of the victory that Christ wins that is given to his bride, the church. The gates of hell cannot prevail against it. And so while the enemy constantly looks to subvert us, to draw us to himself, ultimately hell cannot prevail against the church, can only prevail against the individual soul who voluntarily allows him or herself to be given over to it. And so today we're reminded by the greatness of Peter's response of faith. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God, that we may renew our confession of faith and stand confident that hell cannot touch us when we keep our eyes on Christ. May God bless you all.